And he's a little hard-headed. He was at first. It took him a while to get through it, but when he got through it, man, life treated him a lot better. A lot of things got better for him. I'll go ahead and let him tell your story, man, but he's a great guy, man.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
My name's Justin. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Justin, y'all don't mind, I'm gonna take this mask off so I can talk. At first I was really nervous when Derek told me Randy wants me to speak up here, and then I realized I'm still a little nervous, but then I realized, man, I'm an extreme example of self-will run riot. I got a whole lot of pride and ego, and I love talking about myself. So what am I scared of? You know what I mean? So in 1986, I was born in Temple at Scott and White. Both my parents are deaf, so that's a whole saga in itself. But growing up, I grew up in Coppers Cove, and things were a little bit different having deaf parents. My first language was sign language. Went to my grandparents on the weekend, learned English, who were completely German accents, all that. So, like, it was still hard. I don't understand how I can speak so well today. But I learned my parents. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. She taught me how to read. I read before I went to pre-K, actually. I'm always been a really social butterfly. However, I always felt different because, hey, when your parents come to school and you're signing and nobody else knows that, man, it's different. Social life was completely different. I didn't even hear music till I was like 11 or 12, real music, I heard a little bit of country music in the background of my grandparents' house, but other than that, I'd never heard music or anything like that. My dad, he worked two jobs. He was a butcher at Golden Corral for a while, and he worked at a warehouse on Fort Hood. He was always at work. He drank a little bit, and growing up, whenever he'd get drunk, my parents would fight back and forth. I mean, it wasn't nothing to hear, to see or hear like a cactus plant flying through the air at one parent or another. One time I wake up in the middle of the night to my dad screaming, and he's got a pair of scissors sticking out of his shin, and he says they fell out of the cabinet into his shin. I'm still not quite sure how that happened. But they didn't work out very well for each other. But they got divorced, and I went back and forth with mom and dad. My dad moved to Killeen with his mom, and my mom stayed in Coppers Cove, went into HUD housing, so I was around a lot of drugs and things like that. And at that point, I hadn't tried anything. But one night when I was 12, 13 years old, I went out with a couple of my dad's friends, and like, I didn't bring friends home from school because my parents were deaf, so I didn't want them to see all that, and I didn't want to be embarrassed. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be now, but back then I would have been. So I hung out with like my dad's friends, and they were deaf, and one of them was like really thuggish. Like he's like OG gangster from like down the street. We lived in a bad part of Killeen, and I went out hanging out with him one day. We went to a bridge, and he gets this bottle of 10 High, a gallon of 10 High, and he says, "Man, you ain't, there's something along the lines of, man, you ain't a real gangster until you try this." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I tip, he goes, "Tip it up and don't stop till I tell you to stop." I'm like, okay, I tip up the bottle. I'm carrying it on my arm here, tip it up, and I must have drank probably about a quarter of that bottle in one swig. And it was the first time I ever tasted alcohol. Man, it burned. 10 High, it burned. And I drank a little bit of orange malt liquor. I'm not sure what the brand was, but it was nasty. About 10, 15, 20 minutes later, man, I got this feeling that the book talks about it. I had arrived feeling, and man, had I, dude. Like, I didn't care that my parents were deaf. I didn't care that I didn't care that I thought I was socially awkward. I didn't care about anything but that feeling of that sense of ease and comfort. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I didn't like really get to drink a whole lot after that. It was a little bit here and there. My dad used to have these little bottles of liquor, like little airplane bottles. And one night I broke into his, I had a girl over at the house. I was about 15 years old. He was asleep, he was deaf, so it was easy to get away with a lot of crap when I was growing up. A lot. I've stolen his truck in the middle of the night a lot. But yeah, I had this girl over, and I broke into his liquor cabinet, and I don't know what I was thinking, because he had about 15 or 20 little bottles of liquor, but I downed most of them that night. I didn't get that sense that I couldn't stop, because I didn't want to stop at that point. I had no idea. My dad had kind of stopped drinking at that point. After the divorce, he didn't really drink all that often. And then at one point he quit completely when he found out he was diabetic. He just stopped. He's what the book refers to as a moderate drinker in the beginning. Then he became a heavy drinker, back to a moderate drinker, and then he just quit. So he wasn't alcoholic. He didn't use a program or anything like that. He just stopped. And it took him a couple weeks to realize that all those bottles of liquor in his cabinet were empty, the little bottles. And after that point, man, I just I found weed. My story involves a lot of drugs, but it circles back around to alcohol quite a bit. I found weed, and that's pretty much all I smoked for a little while. I smoked that, drank a little bit of liquor. It wasn't really too out of control that I could see. Looking back, I mean, it's not really too out of control, but I was always looking for that feeling of ease and comfort. And whether I found it in weed or alcohol, it needed to be there every day. So I guess when looking back, if it's every day, it's got to be out of control. So I was about 15 years old. My sister had some friends, and their friends had a mom, single mom. She was way older than me. She was 32. And I don't know what happened, man. Sometimes, there was some alcohol involved, and I ended up sleeping with her, and then I ended up being with her for 10 years. And we got married when I was 17. She was 34, exactly twice my age. And she used to smoke crack with her ex-husband, and she had not smoked it for at least a couple of years. She didn't really mention it too much. Then one day, my weed dealer come over, and he had some crack, and she mentioned that she had done it before. And as soon as he had a little 10 millimeter socket with Tour Boy, and as soon as that happened, man, I was like, you hit that, I'm gonna hit it too, and so she did, and I did, and I was off to the races for about 7 years. From 16 to 22, I smoked crack every day, damn near every day. We were living with my dad. She had kids, but then she lost them to her ex-husband when they got out of jail, or when he got out of jail. He came in and took them, because obviously if you're, at the time she was 31 or 33 and I was 16. If you're messing around with a 16-year-old boy, you shouldn't have kids. You know what I mean? That's what he used to get them, and he was right. But we were living in my dad's little garage apartment, and overnight I would grab my dad's checkbook, and I would take his car. He'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to PCSI on Fort Hood, and I'd take his car, and I'd drive to Killeen, from Copperas Cove to Killeen at 16 years old, and I'd stop at a couple of Walmarts along the way, and I'd write a check out of my dad's checkbook. I'd get $20 cash back a couple of times, and then I'd go hit the motels or whoever I could find, give me some rock, and bring it back home. And two things happened. One time I was driving, my dad had a dim headlight. I was driving through Copperas Cove, and I got pulled over at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And obviously I'm high, You know, I'm I'm whacked out of my mind on crack, and the cop can tell. You know, but I don't think he can. He pulls me out of the car. And he says he's gonna search the car. And, you know, I'm 16. I don't know nothing about rights or anything like that. I don't really have rights like that. 16, I don't think. But he searches the car. He finds a crack pipe, and he gives me a lecture, you know, about how bad it is for me, and this and that. It's to eat holes in your brain, and blah blah blah. And then he smashes the crack pipe on the ground. But because I'm driving my dad's car without a license, and I'm out 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm 16, he takes me to Copperas Cove little city jail there for the night, and they impound my dad's car. And I got released the next day. I walked home. My dad has no clue what happened. He woke up in the morning to go to work. He has no clue where his car is. He has no clue where his checkbook is. None of that. And he didn't really find out because they didn't really make a report about the drugs in the police report at all. It's just, I got arrested for driving without a license. So I told him I told him that part about the dim headlight, no license, and the car getting impounded. And he was pissed off. You know, he went and paid to have the car, to get the car back, and then he went to work late, really late. And then the very next night, you'd think like any normal person, when they go through something like that, it doesn't matter what kind of drug, like any normal person would go through something like that, they wouldn't go do that again, you know. But the very next night, as soon as he went to sleep, I grabbed his checkbook, I grabbed his car, and I headed off to Killeen. And I grabbed 2 20s from Walmart and writing checks, and then I pulled up to a motel I hadn't been to before, so just sat and waited, because, you know, that's how it worked at that time. It probably still does. I pulled up to a motel and just waited. People are peeking out the curtains, people are wondering, and then this truck pulls up next to me, and he's like, "You looking for some work?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I hop in his truck, a little Ford Explorer, and he's digging around the console. I've got $40 in my hand. He's digging around the console. He pulls out a gun, puts it to my head, and says, "Give me your money." And at that point, any normal person would just give them the money and get the hell out of the car. But I start negotiating with him. "Hey man, hell, you take 20, I'll take 20. And, you know, because I still got to get me some of this rock, you know, like I got to. You can't take this money. You know how hard I can't write no more checks tonight. You can only write so many checks a day at Walmart, you know. And you know, we're arguing back and forth, and this was at 16 or 17. At one point, he looked away. I grabbed the gun, pulled it down, and jumped out of the car, got into the car, and drove away with the $40. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And then I went to the next motel and looked for some more rock. I didn't mind it though. And you know, things went on like that for a while. I turned 18. I got a checking account, and that was easier to get money back than it was to use my dad's checkbook, because you know, then at some points they asked for his ID, and I didn't have that, so I just moved on to the next register. And I racked up like $1,500 worth of bad checks written out to places. They got returned. I owed the bank like $800, and eventually warrants started coming to the house for my arrest for theft by check. So there was a few different things happening, and I got this brilliant idea. I was going to take a $20 bill, and I put it on my copy machine. My dad's all-in-one printer, and I'd print a bunch of copies of the 20s, and I'd readjust the colors and all that stuff. So I did, and I ended up getting like about $300 worth of 20s, and I wrapped it with a real 20. And I called my main dealer, and I said, "Hey man, I got $300. What you got for me?" And he gave me, I can't even remember how much it was. It was a lot. But I knew that he would notice, like, because the color was off, and he knew that he would know eventually. But he trusted me so much at that point that I could just hand him money and he'd put it away, because I'd been through him so often. I'd give him so much money. So I kept like $80 in real cash, and as soon as I gave him that, he knew where I lived. So I already had a bag packed. Me and my wife, at the time we had gotten married, me and my wife, we hopped on a bus and we took off and we went to Missouri. And I lived there for about 7 years. And there was 3 reasons I went there: warrants, crack, because I wanted to get away from it. I did want to get away from it, but I brought some with me. And I don't know where the sanity was in that. And you know, plus I gave my drug dealer like $280 worth of bunk 20s that I printed off the printer. Like, yeah, he was gonna come kill me probably. So I got the hell out of Dodge. Lived in Missouri for about 7 years, and after the crack ran out, it only lasted a couple days, and then we stopped because we were in a new place. We didn't know any better until about 2 days after the crack ran out, and then I found somebody already. Like, they were just walking the street, high on crack, and I do it, and off to the races again for another that was 2 years in, so another 4 years, 5 years of smoking back and forth, and then I finally went to work, got a real job. I mean, I had been working since I was 16, so I had money, but like, I didn't go get a real job. It was always cash jobs and things like that under the table. Finally, I don't know. I'm not sure even what happened, honestly. That person that I was getting the drugs from got arrested, and somehow my name didn't get mentioned at all. So somehow I just stopped using crack. I drank and smoked weed and thought my life was fine. I'd get off work. I mean, I'd go to work drunk or high, and I'd get off work and get more drunk and high, and I would function. So I thought, and a couple of years in, I'm driving a taxi, and I get a passenger wants me to take him to St. Louis from Columbia, and the guy's rich. His wife's grandfather owned the patent to the latex they put in paint. When he passed away, he left her all the money, but she was a heroin addict and on house arrest. So she got a check for $80,000 a month, and her husband would have me take him to St. Louis to an Iranian place, check cashing place, and they would give him like $40,000 in cash, $40,000 in money orders, and then we'd go pick up 2 ounces of crack because he loved to smoke crack. It was all it took, really. First time I ever met him. He's in the back seat, and about 30 minutes into the drive, he goes, "Man, you mind if I smoke back here?" I said, "I don't mind." He goes, "I'm not talking about cigarettes." I'm like, "Man, I don't care if you smoke a joint." He's like, "No, I got this," and he pulls out this crack pipe. I'm like, "I don't care as long as you let me take a hit." It had been 2 years, And man, off to the races again. I quit my taxi job. I had a car. I became his personal taxi driver because he couldn't. He paid me $100 a day plus a couple $100 here and there, and all the free crack I could smoke. And yeah, I was off to the race. Me and my wife both. And one night I'm smoking in the room, and there's a yellow porch or street light outside, and there's a fan going, and my long-haired Chihuahua sniffing at the bedroom door, and we're in there smoking crack. And I think that the flashing yellow light somehow get my paranoid mind, man. It was the cops outside. It was a canine sniffing at my bedroom door, and I flushed all my crack down the toilet. And not even thinking my dog isn't right there. That's probably my dog. She would have been barking if somebody was at the door. And it was yellow lights, not red and blue. But yeah. So me and her divorced. After I got away from that guy, me and her divorced. I was still smoking weed, drinking. I mean, throughout this entire time, I'm always looking for the sense of ease and comfort. Always, every day. This is from 16 to 25, so this is like 9 years now that I've been into hard drugs and alcohol and weed every day. And finally, we get divorced. We're just not happy together anymore. I want kids. She couldn't have them. She had her tubes tied. We had started to get her kids back slowly over the last couple of years, and then we divorced, and I moved to be with my first girlfriend I had as a teenager. She had moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and she had 4 kids. So here goes Captain Savaho again, running off to Maryland. And then I get a hold of my stepdaughter's husband, and he's in the oil field, and he says, "I got a job for you down here. You can get down here by tomorrow." I'm like, "Man, it's a 33-hour drive. I'll be there in 33 hours. He's okay. So I drive down there, get in the oil field. I'm there for about a week. Girlfriend's pregnant with my first son. I come home one day, and she's sitting on the couch with my ex-stepdaughter rolling a bowl. And we just found out she's pregnant. And I was pissed off. But I wanted to try that, meth. And we were working 8 hours, was eight or 16 hours a day, depending on if the guy on the next shift didn't show up, which my guy didn't show up a lot, so I was working 16 hours a day, 12 days on, 4 days off, and meth helped a lot. I stayed awake. I didn't go to sleep. I didn't go to sleep in the 8 hours I was off. A lot of times you'd find me in the doghouse in the driller's platform, asleep, maybe 2-3 hours a day on my 8 hours off. I wouldn't even go home. I would just stay at the rig. And the rigs were like an hour away from the house, so it wasn't that bad. But, I don't know, I'm just pissed off. I'm sitting here all the while, I'm sitting here pissed off, rolling a bowl, and my girlfriend, my pregnant girlfriend's, I'm pissed off at her for doing it. You know what I mean? And so I get a hold of her dad, I get a plane ticket, I send her back to Maryland. I say I'm going to transfer up to Maryland eventually once I get onto this different company. So I stayed down here for about 5 weeks. She went back to Maryland. And this whole time I didn't know she was on opiates and morphine. Her stepdad had been feeding that to her since she was 15, 16 years old, and I had no idea about opiates or none of that stuff. I mean, I've heard of heroin, but I never heard of like Percocets, Oxycontin, all that stuff. I never heard of physical addiction or none of that stuff. I haven't had any personal experience with it, but I mean, she was hooked on them, and I didn't know it. After she left, I was down there for about 5 weeks, and man, I did everything I could to get just smoke as much meth as possible. I lost like 80 pounds in 2 months, but I was working my ass off. The only people that knew was my ex stepdaughter and her husband, and they were doing it with me. So I was making like $2,400, $3,200 every 2 weeks, depending on how many hours I worked, take home. But by the end of the 2 week pay period, I was broke already. Just all the time. Finally, I got transferred up to Maryland, in Pennsylvania, the gas drilling rigs, and found out about her opiate problem when my son was born. He was born addicted to opiates. He had to be withdrawn in the NICU with a little bit of morphine at a time until about 14 days in. He was finally weaned off of it because he had a seizure at 2 days old from withdrawals. So they gave him some morphine, and that helped it, and they weaned him off of it. So there was a time where I got stuck on some K2 for a while, but she was smoking like 9 grams of it a day. It was eating holes in her brain, and she was already nuts to begin with. So I took my son. I quit doing all drugs at that point, except for K2. There's always something. And I was drinking a little bit. And I took my son, moved him down to Texas, and got custody of him. And for about a year, I did quit everything but alcohol. I didn't drink alcoholically. I just, drank on the weekends, drank a little bit here and there. But I knew, deep down subconsciously that something was up with alcohol or drugs or everything. I knew, So I'd go to a poker game with my buddies, and they'd offer me beer, and I'd take a couple sips, and then I'd dump it out on the ground, because a couple sips is not really going to do nothing for you. You're not going to get that ease and comfort it says in here. We're looking for that sense of ease and comfort that comes almost at once after a few drinks that you see others taking with impunity, which means without consequence. So after a few drinks, I'd get the craving. You know what I mean? I'd get that sense of ease and comfort, and that's what I would crave, is the sense of ease and comfort. I got with another girl. Her mom smoked weed, so I started smoking weed again. And then she was a monster. That didn't work out. She was a monster as a mom, so it was great. I got my son away from her. All the while, there's no problem with me at all. There's nothing is my fault. You know what I mean? But I got with another girl, this last girlfriend, and I had a couple kids with her. And in her first pregnancy, I had started smoking meth again. And she acted like she didn't care, We fought a lot. We argued a lot. It's been nuts. I lost my job at the time I was a head custodian at the Copper Cove Junior High School. I lost my job, so I started doing this retail contracting thing that, I travel everywhere. Colorado, New Mexico, all the way to Florida, all the way as high as Missouri. Just this whole area, all over Texas. And of course, that many hours a day, I gotta have something to keep me awake, right? So off to the races with meth again, man. At one point I had told her I quit, but I didn't. I just quit off and on. And I was up for about 4 or 5 days, driving around Houston one time. She was driving me and I was in the passenger seat, and I was working 2 different jobs, same retail contractor, but I was going to Walmart overnight because they're open 24 hours, and I was installing the little L brackets underneath the table for Jackson Hewitt kiosks because somebody sat on them and broke them. So they had us installing L brackets. And then during the day, I was at Floor and Decor resetting the planogram for the wall and tile deco area. And so I was working 24 hours, just and I wouldn't take no time off. And she was driving me. She would nap out in the car. We had no idea she was pregnant at that point. This is between my last 2 kids, and she was probably about 4 or 5 weeks along. And I told her, "Hey, honey, let me drive for a bit. You need to sleep." I said, "Okay." She gets in the passenger seat. I'm not behind the wheel 5 minutes. I take an exit. I wake up. I'm smashed into the back of a brand new Cadillac. This lady just bought it off the showroom floor. Was driving it home. I completely totaled the rear end of it, and I had borrowed this car from a friend of mine. So it had no insurance, none of that, and she wasn't buckled in. She smashed into the dash and onto the floor, ruptured her spleen, and lost the baby, and we didn't know she had a baby. And that was from me staying awake, 4 or 5 days in a row, not getting no sleep. Basically, it's from the drugs. It's from me. So we went back and forth for a little while over that. Then she got pregnant again. We broke up a couple times over the meth. She'd find out about it, make me promise not to do it, and I'd promise not to do it, and I'd mean it. I'd mean it with everything in my heart. I could pass a polygraph, man. I would never smoke meth again. And it wasn't 2 days later, I was already at my friend's house rolling a bowl, and getting some more for the road. I would leave for work, and kind of like what I heard yesterday. Man, I would go on the road for work, and I'd do it there, and when I'd come home, I wouldn't do it. And I thought that was control, till one day I was in Louisiana, and I just bought this car for $800. It burned oil like half a 5-quart jug of oil every half tank is how much it burned. So it would overheat, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana, outside of Tallulah, Louisiana. And I pull onto this access road because my car's overheating, and there's no shoulder. There's a ditch right at the road. So I got to park in the middle of the road, basically. It's a 2-lane road. I got to park on the road. I'm letting it cool down so I can get to a gas station, and I had just went to a gas station and found some meth. So I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I start rolling a bowl. I look up in the rear view, and there's a cop sitting right behind me with his lights on. I'm like, oh shit. And I had a 9mm in the glove box. I stuffed the baggie in an empty pack of cigarettes with a joint in it in the glove box. And I'm acting all crazy because I've been up for a couple of days. And he's asking me what's going on. I'm explaining to him about the car. And he asked me if there's any firearms in the vehicle. I said no. At that point, I'd forgotten that there was a 9mm in the glove box. And for some stupid reason, when he went back to the car and I went to go reach the insurance, I saw the gun, I shut the glove box, put my hands on the wheel, and when he came back, I was honest and said, "Hey, I forgot about this 9mm my dad left in the glove box," and blah, blah, blah. And they grabbed my arms, and he opens the glove box, and he says, "What's this?" and grabs this empty pack of cigarettes. I smacked the empty pack of cigarettes out of the cop's hand and said, "That's illegal search and seizure." Wrong idea. They grabbed both my arms, pulled them out the windows, then they got me out of the car, put me on the ground, handcuffed me, asked if they could search my vehicle 3 or 4 times. I said no 3 or 4 times, and they threatened a K-9 unit, so I said yes. And they searched, they found the meth, they found the joint, they found they already saw the firearm, and I was in jail for about a week on a $15,000 bond, possession of firearm, and all that. But like this is all to say, like, this is all to say, like, this is the powerlessness of alcohol, drugs, I'm powerless over it. You know what I mean? Finally, we had broke up for a while. Finally, I ended up getting my kids taken away. I started her on meth. We ended up getting the kids taken away after a few months of that, a little over a year ago. And I didn't quit again for about a little over a month after I lost my kids. At that point, I didn't care, But finally, I went to treatment Centocor here in Waco at the behest of CPS. I quit for about 17 days, holed up at a friend's house, and then finally got a bed in Centocor. I went to Centocor. And I've seen Rainey come in there. I've seen a few other people come in there. I saw Derek in there. The H&Is come in there, and they keep talking about this powerlessness, the insanity of the obsession. And the thing that turned me off was this turning my will and life over to care of God as I understand Him. Like religion, I was agnostic, which I now know means I don't know. Like I'm without knowledge. But basically, I was atheist. So that turned me off the program completely. But a couple weeks into the treatment center, I resolved I'm going to do this program, but not seriously. I'm just going to do what parts I want to do. I got out of treatment, asked Derek to be my sponsor. I moved into Solid A House, which was a great house. I got a job with Derek, and then about 30 days later, I kept messing around with my watch. I was on probationary period, kept messing around with my watch, kept not wearing my safety glasses, and I got fired from that job. And then I got evicted.
Building a safety chair.
Yeah, I was building a safety. I was building a locker too. I keep forgetting about that.
You tell everybody that.
Yeah, I was building a locker on the clock, welding a locker together on the clock, and everybody kept telling me stop doing that. But I know better. You know what I mean? I know best. Self-will, right? So, in sobriety, man, I've been through a lot of crap. I got evicted from the Solid A House the next day. Went and lived in a screen house for about 3 weeks at an RV resort in Whitney with another friend who had relapsed a couple times. My sobriety date's May 27th of 2019, and through all this, I stayed sober. I got into the Oxford House after 3 weeks out in Whitney, and then. And I kept going back, man, to not drug. I kept going back to that other drug, women, the baby mama. It was horrible for me. And so, at one point she got me arrested in November. I spent about 50 days in jail. When I got out of jail, something happened to me when I was in jail. I went to a couple of AA meetings in jail. I think Belton Dam Group carried the message in Bell County, and I got a book, and I had started to work the steps with Derek, but I was never serious about it. And then I quit, and I went to NA, and that was a whole big thing. And then when I moved back to Oxford House, I got back with Derek, and I started working the program again. I started the steps over like 3 or 4 times, and then something happened to me in jail. Man, I was explaining to this other meth head in jail the program, because I understood it. I read the book. I understood it. I thought I did, And but when I got out of jail, I resolved I was gonna really work the steps this time. And Derek and me sat down. We did 1, 2, and 3. I did step 4 in about 2 weeks. Yeah, that time. And we got to step 5, and then we moved right along. I started making amends, and then this pandemic hit, and I started going to these. I used to, when I was living in the sober house, I went to meetings as a requirement of the sober house. I started going to Zoom meetings because I was on second shift, so I couldn't really go to. I could go to. There's one meeting in town here you can go to if you're on second shift, and that's Triangle. So I was taping my phone to the side view mirror on the forklift and attending these Zoom meetings at 5:30 every day. And in there, I heard a lot of stuff, and that's why that's why it's good to make meetings. But it was over and over again. Work the steps. It was about the solution. Work the steps. The spiritual side of it, and I grew. And this thing I saw the other day, I think it was the 4th of July. This is what really what really got me was deep down in every man, woman, and child, this is page 55 of the big book, is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it's there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. And further on it says, what's sometimes called a conversion by religion is often only discovery of God as a friend in need. What is sometimes called religion is often only the experiencing of the help and strength of God's power in our lives. What is sometimes called holiness is often only the invitation of God to be our friend. As God becomes your friend, you become a friend to others. We experience true human friendship, and from this experience we can imagine what kind of a great friend God can be. We believe him to be tireless, selfless, all-conquering, miracle-working friend. We can reach out to the great friend and figuratively take his hand in ours. And I've done that. That's where these steps, rooms, sponsored, and talking to other people like me, people that have recovered. I finally built a relationship with God, and that's the biggest thing that I've gotten out of this program. It's not about, for me, it's not about the alcohol anymore. That obsession's been removed. It's not about the drugs anymore. The obsession's been removed. It's about doing the next right thing, making right any wrongs I do along the way. I make them right. Sometimes immediately, sometimes at the end of the day, but I make them right as quick as I can. I'm not perfect. You know, there's only one who is righteous, and that's the higher power. We're sinners, and we're gonna hurt people, and we can't control that, but we can control how we make it right. We can hurt less people. We can hurt people less, a lot. A lot of times now, I go throughout the day and I do like an inventory on my thoughts and my attitudes towards people now, and that prevents me from actually getting to the point where I hurt somebody. You know, this program's done amazing things for me. Over a year ago, I was in my meth dealer's, after my kids got taken, I was in my meth dealer's garage, sleeping on a couch next to a Crown Vic that was all torn apart, engine missing, and all that stuff. And that's where I was before I went to Synacor. And today, I signed the lease on my 2-bedroom townhouse a couple days, beginning of last month. And I got a car that I got from a real dealership. It's not a buy here, pay here car. It runs. It starts when I turn the key. Over the last 3 weeks, I've gotten unsupervised visits with my kids. This last on Friday, I picked up my kids out of Killeen from my ex's sister's house, and I brought them all the way up here to Waco, and we had a little pizza party and watched Frozen 2 and all that stuff at my house with no supervision. By the end of this month or beginning of next month, I will have my kids back, is what they're telling me. Today I don't have the obsession to drink. I don't have the obsession to use. I honestly have an obsession to do the right thing, to help others. I've got 2 sponsees now. In the beginning, my sponsor asked me, am I willing to go to any length to stay sober for good and for all? And I'm willing to take another alcoholic through to work. I said yes to both things, and I'm doing that. And it's working wonders in my life. I can't tell you how grateful I am that it's not just all these things, that I've gotten. It's not getting my kids back. It's not the townhouse. It's not the car. It's not the good job that I've got. I don't let anything disturb my spirit. I stay undisturbed. And if I get disturbed, I've got tools in this book, and I've got people I can call to talk about this book, to remind me about things that I don't even know that didn't even jump out at me in this book yet. I can call them and they'll remind me of something. They'll remind me to pray. They'll remind me to meditate on it. And I have those tools to undisturb my spirit, and that's really what makes me happy, joyous, and free. Is my spirit's undisturbed. In sobriety, I've been to jail. I lost the ex, and I mean, of course, that was a good thing actually. But getting my kids back, and I'm scared shitless. I have fear all through me about getting my kids back. I got 4, and getting my kids back by myself. But every time I think about that fear, I go back to the book, or I talk to somebody about it, and that, I mean, it does wonders for me. It removes that fear. There's a lot. I had a great fear of speaking here today, and as soon as I started talking, I wasn't afraid at all. What's that?
Doing a great job.
Oh, thanks, y'all. Yeah, the only thing I had planned was to read that meditation, and to say my name's Justin, I'm an alcoholic, and I was born in 1986. That's the only thing I got planned. I was gonna write something out in my phone, but I didn't. I figured I like to talk about myself, so here we go. If you haven't done the steps, I do recommend you do it. Get a sponsor and do it. I mean, I really do. It's not, like I said, it's not about the. It is about not drinking alcohol in the beginning. That's why it's the first step. You're powerless over alcohol, but it only mentions alcohol in 2 steps: the first step and the last step. You're powerless over alcohol, and help other alcoholics, carry the message to other alcoholics. Everything in between, it's about living life, man. It's about making right on everything. Trust God, clean house, and help others, and that's how you stay. That's how the obsession stays gone, and it stays gone for me. I think about it every once in a while, but when I do, I go back to my tools: trust God, clean house, help others, and that's how I do it, man. My name's Justin, and that's all I got.
Thank you. Good job.
All right, I don't have a speaker as of yet for next week, but if not, we'll probably cover step 1.